Hello everyone, welcome back. So today we're going to talk a little bit more about this primary arms GLX 1-10x24 first focal plane. It's got an excellent reticle. It's called the M10. I've done videos where I show you guys the reticle. It's got the outer post, and it's got an outer circle of what appears to be about a 65 MOA circle when you're in 1X. And then as you zoom in, it shows you an inner circle. But there's definitely some edge distortion if you're in 1X, okay? And I wasn't sure if it was like what I did is I pulled out my 1-8. This is the SLX scope. This is the first one. It's like the $300 one. I pulled this one out to see if it's like if it was there, and I just never noticed it. And yeah, with this one, it's like it doesn't have the edge distortion. It doesn't have edge distortion. I pulled out my PLX 1-8 compact. Same thing. I mean, there is a tiny little bit, like even with the PLX. If I go to one of those targets over there, okay, and I go right to the if I put the target right to the edge and move my head in some weird position, I can get a little bit of a distortion with both this PLX or with the SLX one, but it's like right at that like 5%. Like if you look at the whole scope, it's like up to 5% in. With this one, right, with this GLX 1-10x24, depending on where you're when you're looking in it, right, I can see I'm not in the shadow, right? There's no shadow. You know, so I got a picture that's edge to edge, okay. But if I move my head a little bit, I can see as much as like 20% of a distortion of a blur, right? Like the 20% of the outer scope can be a blur. Now I can fix that by like just moving my head just a little bit. So this thing is like really sensitive to like where your head position is. And what tends to happen is if you, yeah, I mean, if your head has to be like perfect, your eyeball has to be like perfectly centered on this, so that you don't see some distortion around the edge, you know, near the edge, and it can be anywhere from like, you know, like 20% to 5% out. Again, depending on where your head is. Now, this is only in 1X. If you go up to 2X, right, and you look through it, I mean, yeah, now, like, if I move my head, I see, like, maybe a distortion at, like, maybe the 5% point, like on the outer edge of the field of view, like, maybe up to 5%. If I go up to, like, 3X, at 3X, there's no distortion. So no matter, you know, I basically I can move my head, my eyeball all the way like out of the eye box, so that I'm like totally up in the shadow. There's no distortion. So, but if you go to 2X, yeah, there's a little bit of distortion on the outer edge depending on how you move your head. If you go to like, let's say 1.5, yeah, you start seeing it like maybe up until maybe about 10 to 15% of the outer edge. And if you go to like 1X, like if your head is in like the right position, there'll be no distortion or very little distortion. Like right now, I got no distortion on my left side, but on my right side. So here's the thing: it's like I can move my head so that I'm in 1X. I can move myself a little bit so that I see no distortion on the left side, right, looking at the target. But then on the far right side, there'll be distortion. I can move my head a little bit on the right side to get rid of that distortion. But then there'll be distortion on the other side. So, you know, or I can kind of find a sweet spot in the middle where there's just like a little bit of distortion on either side. I mean, it's there. I mean, now this is the second scope that they have sent me. The first one that I got in when I placed my order had a parallax problem, okay, because I did a separate video on that. So the parallax was like perfect up to it was basically parallax for like 10 yards, and I could see, and you know, I could focus on a bullseye at 10 yards, and it was like crystal clear. But if I went out to 200 yards, I couldn't focus the reticle and the target at the same time. And if I went to a different magnification, it was like completely a blur, you know. So there was no way I could get diopter to work because I was out of parallax. With this one, it's parallaxed correctly, and Primary Arms told me that all their LPVOs are parallaxed for 100 yards. Okay, so what that means is like at 10 yards, if I'm focusing on a small thing like a bullseye, it'll be slightly blurry, but then if I go further out, it's fine. Okay, so that's how an LPVO needs to be parallaxed. So the point is that on the first scope that I got in, and I had noticed that there was some distortion, and I thought initially that was I didn't fully understand it. I thought that maybe the distortion was because it was not a true 1x. Okay, I thought maybe it was like a 1.2x or 1.3 magnification in its lowest magnification. But now that I'm really like working on this today and focusing on it and trying to understand it, and like I'm on the target, and what I'm doing is like I'm coming like going right up to the edge where I got like half of the target is in the scope, and the other half of the target is outside the scope, and I can see that it's really not a magnification issue. It's just that the edge is distorted. I mean, there's a distortion at the edge, and you can kind of fix it by moving your head around a little bit, but it's just, you know, that distortion is just going to be there. Okay? I think that this is the reason why. So I read a comment somewhere that Primary Arms is not going to make any more of these. Okay, so basically once they sell out these 1-10x24 GLX scopes, then they're not putting any more into production. And I had asked the question why, and the person said that they weren't up to their GLX standards, which at the time I didn't. I wasn't quite sure, but now like I've been working with this more, like, focusing on this one issue, and I think I found the reason why they say it's not up to their GLX standards is because there is a bit of a distortion on the edge, right? When you're in 1x. Okay? So it's not that it's not usable, but it's there, okay? And it's one of those things that here's the thing, like I really hadn't noticed it too much. Until I was like really looking for it. Okay, so it's there. You're not going to notice it. It's like, like right now it's like really at the outer edge, and if you see a distortion, you can just move your head, just like move your eyeball a little bit, and the distortion will go away. Okay, but instead, the thing that actually kind of stood out to me more was the eye relief. This thing has like a very large eye relief, and I've pushed the scope as far forward as possible. And I've actually had to extend the stock one more position than I normally do. It basically, I would have to go even longer. So like when you're all the way out here, right, when you really lengthen the stock up, you can get to a point where you're looking in here, and it's like the walls of the scope are like really thin, okay? But you gotta be further back because this eye relief is set further back. And then when I'm further back over here, yeah, I can definitely see because now I'm like centered on it, and I can definitely see like the distortion on both sides now when I'm further back. Like the walls of the scope have like are very thin now, but I can definitely see the distortion on the outer walls when I'm further back. Like the outer 20% on both sides is slightly distorted. When I shorten this thing up, get a little bit closer. Oh, a little too close there. Okay, so now now I'm more prone to seeing scope shadow, but it seems like I'm more prone to seeing scope shadow, but distortion has basically reduced itself. So that's kind of like the trade-off here. It's like you either gotta like bring your eye far enough back from the lens so that you don't get any of that, so you get a minimal amount of like scope ring, right? Let's call it that, the walls of the scope. But when you do that, when you come way back here, you can definitely see the distortion on the outer edge. If you zoom up a little bit, it basically goes away. If you zoom back, I mean, again, if if you're shooting, you're really not going to focus on that outer distortion. But anyway, I think I discovered the reason why Primary Arms is not promoting the scope, because normally what they'll do is they'll send out like free samples to like all these different gun channels that show for them. Everybody will say how great the scope is. In this case, with this GLX 1-10x24, they didn't do that. Okay, they didn't send it out there. There's not too many channels out there that really covered this scope. Of course, I paid for this, all right? So, and all the reviews that you guys see from me are truly independent, okay? Because I paid for this full price out of my pocket. And it's just interesting to, I kind of figured out why I think they're not promoting it. It's because of that, there's a little bit of a blur on the outer edge. I mean, again, you can fix it by moving your eye a little bit, moving your face a little bit. You can get it to clear up. But it's definitely there, and like I said, I had to go looking for it. It didn't just jump out at me. Like initially, I thought it was just that. Like when I looked at it, and I noticed it first, like I said, on the first scope that I got in, that was out of parallax, and I thought it was just a magnification issue. I thought it was just because, okay, it's not a true 1x, it's like a 1.2 or something. But no, it's something. It's more than that. Okay, so just be aware, if you guys get this scope, this 1-10x24 GLX, it does have a distortion. And this is the second one I've got in, so this has how this thing's been designed, how it's been engineered. There is a bit of a distortion on the outer edges, and it's really too bad, because I think that this 1-10 design is with this reticle, with this M10 reticle, it's a great design. I think now it's a very long scope. I think they would have. It's a 30 millimeter long scope. I forgot what the measure on this was. I think they would do better by going to a 34 millimeter and trying to shorten up the scope. I think that might be a better, because if they go to they'll end up probably with the same weight, maybe a little bit heavier, but the eye box might be a little bit more forgiving. Okay, so that's what I think that they should do. I think they should update this, make an updated version of this, and go with a 34 millimeter tube and try to shorten the scope up a little bit. This part here, like from the turrets back, is extremely long. Okay. Because I've got this cantilever that pushes the scope up, and I'm still like out of space. I can't push this thing far enough. I think there's a good compromise where it is right there. So that's the deal with this. Yes, there is this 1-10x24. There is a little bit of a distortion issue. You may not see it right away, but if you start working with it, start like looking for stuff like that, you will notice it. Okay. And like I said, I pulled out my $300 SLX second focal plane. There's maybe a 5% like at the edge, right? But nothing as much as this. I pulled out the PLX, same deal. Like if your head's in the wrong position, you're looking at that far edge. There's maybe a 5% distortion, but this one's got like maybe a 20% distortion. If you move your head in the out of position, that's where it is. So anyway, drop some comments below. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you all soon.